Hello and welcome to BusyWorksBeats.com. Today enters our drum patterns course, and I want to thank you guys for hopping into this course. If you don't know me, I'm Game from BusyWorksBeats.com. We train over 1 million producers around the world. So we're going to work with Drake, Kanye West, Post Malone, Ariana Grande, French Montana, Young Thug, Polo G, Lil Baby, Trippie Redd, J. Cole, Kendrick Lamar, and a long list of other folks. So I'm going to break down drum patterns into a science and make it super simple for you guys. It doesn't need to be complicated. So let's switch straight into the doll and let's get straight to it. So firstly, the stuff I'm going to show you guys is not only triplets and flams and how to copy drum breaks timing. Like for example, we could take this drum break here made by Sound Oracle. If you open up a drum break and slice, we could actually take out the groove. So let me show you guys how to do that first. So let's say you can't create rhythms and you're struggling with rhythms. We're going to get into how you guys can kind of take inspiration from drum breaks. So here we're in Sound Oracle's pack. This is called Oracle Percussion Loops. And let's say you're inspired by a loop like this one. Because there's such nice timing, let's right click, let's open a new slice. All right. Now in Slicer, you're going to click this little auto slice button over here in the corner. There's other ways to slice, but this is the most straightforward way. And now what we need to do is actually send this to the piano roll. So in the top left, this icon here says dump score to piano roll. So now what it means is it's going to chop all those chops into notes that we could use in the piano roll. So here's what it sounds like chopped up. So what we're going to do is if you zoom all the way in, these aren't perfectly quantized. So beginner drum patterns are super quantized. They're super locked in. Like if I hit Alt Q and I quantize this, or I hit Control Q, you know, it locks all the notes into whatever the grid is, and it makes it super robotic. So this gives us human timing. Okay, so we can copy this human timing. What we need to do though is export this as a score sheet. So in the top left, let's go to File, Export, save score as, save it anywhere on your wherever. Okay, drum percussion loop. From here, we're gonna go to our hi-hats. So here I have some hi-hats laid out in a plugin here. Pretty simple. Nothing crazy. So what we can do is we hit Alt Q on these hi-hats. Right here it says template. This is actually where we can load up groove templates. Okay, so let's click this folder icon. Let's go to where we saved it, which is our desktop. And we're going to click on the file. And now you will see these red lines pop up in the back. So the two main parameters you guys want to mess with is the sensitivity and the start time. So as you see, the start time is locking the chops to the timing of the drum groove. So here's what it sounds like fully quantized to the drum groove timing. You hear it has that natural like push pull. So it sounds good to me, but if you guys wanted to pull back on the effect, you would pull back your start time so that it's not super quantized. So that's a secret key that nobody really knows about in FL Studio. Ableton has a built-in one. You just right click and extract drum groove, I believe it's called. And it's more straightforward, but in FL Studio, that's a little more hidden. So I wanted to show that to you guys. So again, if you struggle with anything during this masterclass of this course, that's one technique you guys can use without thinking too much. Okay, so I wanted to show that to you guys first. Now we're gonna go over what is rhythm. I'll keep this short, but rhythm is a frequency. It's just a really slow frequency. So, you know, if I pull up a sound design plugin like Serum, for example, we have what's called an oscillator, and an oscillator moves, okay, it creates frequency over time, a cycle over time. Okay, so if I lower this, I go lower and lower. Now we're in the bass octave. Now what happens if I go lower than this note and I go into the super, super low notes? So let's draw this out in the piano roll. So right here is super audible. Okay, we hear that. Now what if we go down an octave? It's less audible, but it's still audible. Now if we go down another octave, there is a little rumble, but that's more so from artifacts. But it's becoming inaudible, but it's still moving. And so rhythm is this really low frequency. So when you think about rhythm as just a really low frequency, it makes more sense. Rhythm is the secret frequency of our beats and our songs. So when we think of it that way, we start to demystify what rhythm actually is. Now, beats and measures, let's go over the basics real quick. Every time you turn on the metronome, consider it like a heartbeat. Okay? So whenever you guys see like whatever timing, like 4/4 timing, it means we're counting 4 heartbeats 4 times. So we're the top number, or the what is it? The numerator is how many beats are we counting. So if I say the time signature is 6/8, that means we're counting to 6 8 times. That's all it means. So let's do different time signatures. Let's do 4 over 4. So we're going to count the 4 times. Now notice when I go back around, I'm going to say 1 2 3 4 2 2 3 4 3 2 3 4 4 2 3. The reason I'm saying 1 2 3 4 at the beginning each time, I'm counting each section of the bar that we're counting. So to make it easy, the heartbeat is the metronome. Keep it that simple. Now, as you count, 1 2 3 4 2 2 3 4 3 2 3 4 4 2 3 4 1 2 3 4. So we're counting the 4 times. That's what 4/4 timing means. Now, if we were doing 6/8 timing, which you can also change in the settings of FL Studio, but I don't want to make this an FL Studio course. It's not really about FL Studio. But if you guys want to change the grid to compensate for this, you can go to your options. You can actually go to, where is it at? I think it's project settings. You can go to where it says numerator here, and you can make this 6 and then 8. So now your grids in the background are changing depending on your settings. So now it counts 1 bar as 6 beats. 1 2 3 4 5 6 2 2 3 4 5 6 3 2 3 4 5 6 4 2 3 4 5 6 5 2 3 4 5 6 6 2 3 4 5 6 7 2 3 4 5 6 8 2 3 4 5 6 1 2, and then repeat. All we did was count the 6 8 times. I don't know why they make it more complicated than that. That's how simple it is. Now, when would you use 6/8 timing? Maybe for like R&B, specific type stuff like that. Now, I rarely go out of time signature 4/4, so I would not recommend going out there unless you guys want to experiment, because it's you got to wrap your brain around it. Being honest with you guys. Okay, so that's what a measure is, and that's what a beat is. We're just counting the heartbeats of the metronome. Okay, and then we're counting that however many times we want. That we consider that chunk a bar. So if I say 4/8, that means I'm counting the 4, and 4 counts is a bar. So 1 2 3 4, that means that's 1 bar. So that's what I mean by bars versus beats. Okay, so that's 4/4 timing. Now let's move into applicable stuff. Let's start off with the super basics. You guys need to understand in EDM, they use what's called 4 to the floor. 4 to the floor is basically the kick every beat. So let's pull up some drums here. I don't think I have an EDM pack. So we're going to use Oracle stuff. Has been trapping. Let's just use this for now. All right. And then let's grab a snare. So again, we're not trying to make an EDM hit right now. We're just showing the basics. So 4 to the floor is when the kick hits every beat of the metronome. Now I'm doing this way to show you guys an error. So right now, let's play this. Now that's very, 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 very fast of a BPM. Most EDM is from like 100 to about, I'd say 130-ish. Usually 128 is an EDM frequency. Very danceable. 108, 112, 115. These are all tempos. Okay, that we can mess with. 100 BPM. And the reason people use these BPMs is because they match the state of, whether you're working out, that might be one frequency. What's the tempo? What's the average timing of somebody's gait when they walk? Scientists have measured all this, and they've kind of figured out, okay, if this person's on some illicit drug, for example, then they'll know that their heart rate goes to this frequency. So they're going to make music in that frequency because they know people in the crowd are on that type of illicit drug. And that's why a lot of EDM is like higher BPM, because those people are, now I'm not going to accuse people, but people in the crowd are on stuff most of the time. And so different frequencies tap into where that person is. Like if I'm running on the treadmill, I want a more upbeat song because it matches me running versus a slow song that's not matching what I'm doing. So that's what I mean by higher BPMs here. Now, again, I'm not casting an umbrella. I just want you guys to know where this stuff comes from. But 100 BPM is very danceable. 108, 112, very danceable. 115 is another danceable. 120 is very danceable. And then we start getting into more house stuff like at 128. So So it just depends on what type of track we have going on. So those are the very danceable. Anything above 100 BPM is pretty danceable. Until you get to about 130s and 140s, it becomes very fast paced. All right. So that's that on that. So that's called 4 to the floor when the kick hits every beat. So if I turn the metronome on, the kick is just hitting with the metronome. That's called 4 to the floor. Okay. Now let's talk about tresillo. Tresillo is the most ubiquitous pattern in all of the drum patterns. So before we even get into all the like techniques and the different genres, we have to start with tresillo because this is the foundation for the majority of everything you guys are going to create for the most part, or alto tresillo. So, okay, so what we're going to do is pull up some different drum kits here. Let's do Afrobeat, for example. Now, Afrobeat also has accompanying percussion. So let's go to 105. Now there's tempo ranges. You got to think EDM is very fast paced. Afrobeat is danceable, but it's not super fast paced. And I don't want to put limits around it, but keep in mind that you want to reference the songs that you guys are trying to emulate because every song is completely different. All right. So now that we have the percussion in the background, so it goes 1, 1, 2, 1, 1, 2, 1, 1, 2, 1, 1, 2, like that. So it's basically regular and then chopped up. So it's like if I were to do instead of going it's going like that. And it has a little what's called swing to it, but we're not going to jump too far ahead. So for Afro type stuff, now this is a broad generalization, and I have to say that because I don't want you guys to say this is the only way to do anything. Okay, so let's open this up. And it all comes down to tresillo. So let's write this with the kick first. Tresillo is not triplets. It's ta, 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 like that. Okay, so what we can do is repeat that pattern, but change out the actual instrument. So this is the rhythm, but what happens if we start changing out the actual instrument? Like boom, ka, ta, boom, ka, ta, like that. Okay, so let's swap out the second hit for a rim shot, and then let's go from the rim to a shaker. And then we could also move that second tresillo over, or we could just swap it out. So repeating it over and over again would be a little boring. So I'm going to do my natural ear. That's more of an American thing to do. But when we're doing tresillo, we can offset notes just a little bit for more bounce. But the main thing is that boom, 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 boom. That's the source of the bounce. Everything else is kind of based on our style. So that's Afrobeat. Now, what about drill? So let's move into drill. Now, drill uses what are called counter snares. And a counter snare is basically a snare that sounds like a hi-hat. It's basically a shaved off snare. So it has, let me pull up a regular snare for you guys. So let's say this was the snare. What we would do is we would go to the envelope, go to the mod here, switch this to a high pass filter, and then filter out the frequencies here until the snare sounds like a hi-hat. So we're cutting out the low end to make the snare feel like a hi-hat. And it's the same pattern. The difference is we're changing the BPM. So instead of 100 to about 108 and 120, where Afrobeat might sit, we're going to go all the way up to 144 BPM. And this creates our drill sound. Now, if you guys struggle with drum patterns, I would highly recommend keeping your metronome on. So that's called tresillo. It's ta, 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 ta. It's just faster. Okay, so what about using tresillo for things like reggaeton? And I don't know if I have my reggaeton drums on here. Oh yeah, I do. So let's go to, they have everything in different names, so bear with me. Okay, so it's the same exact thing. We're just swapping out the sound. So what I need to do before I do all this is turn down the volume because I know these drums are loud. So one thing about reggaeton kits, very loud. Okay, so it's boom, ka, boom, boom, ka, boom. Okay, so they are the definition of tresillo. Okay, so let's go here. Let's lower it down to somewhere around 100 BPM where we could start this reggaeton. turn that kick down a little bit. So it's that simple. It's all coming back to tresillo. Hopefully you guys can see this. Now they might not do kick, they might do boom, ka, ka, boom, ka, ka, like double snare. Okay, so it depends on the song, but it all comes back. Let me switch out the snare. And then we can slow down the BPM if it's too fast. So here I can see 90 to about, I can't really see 120. I feel like 120 is probably going to be too fast for this genre. Let's just try it. But I would say 90 up to about the 110s. I guess you could do 120. And again, it goes into dance BPMs at that point. But we also can do 90s. Let's see how low we can go. That's the cool part about reggaeton. You could play it fast, you could play it slow. Whereas other genres are kind of built into a certain tempo. So hopefully I'm starting to unlock and make you guys realize that drum patterns are a lot easier than what you may have expected. Let's make some trap rhythms here. Now trap is the same thing. Now the difference here in trap is that we're going to produce in what's called double time. So notice how I'm usually in BPMs below 100. What happens if I go to a BPM? In my estimation, anything above 120 is usually double time, unless you're in EDM. So anything above 120, you're getting into what we call double time. Now, what is double time? If I turn on the metronome and I start counting, like we did before, 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 3, 4, 4, 2, 3, 4. You know, let me show you guys. It just makes more sense when you write out your drums. So if you were to write your drums the same exact way that we did with our, let me add a snare in here. The same way we did with the other genres, like kick, snare, it will sound too fast. Like that does not sound like a trap beat. Okay, and the reason is because we're putting our snares on the wrong position. So in trap, we put the snares on the 3 and the 7 count because now we're in double time. If you don't want to be confused, you could just right click the tempo in FL Studio and make this half speed. But most of us are producing in double time. The reason we do this is because of hi-hats. We want to create glitches and other things, which are a lot easier at higher tempos than they are at lower tempos because the grid becomes too microscopic. But at higher tempos, you have a lot more control over how you chop stuff. That's why a lot of producers are using higher BPMs, but really producing at half the BPM. So anyhow, we're going to listen to the metronome. And this creates the halftime effect. So now I'm going to put my snares on the 3 and 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 2, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 3, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 4, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. But technically, even though we're counting to 8, it's really only 4 beats. And that's the confusing part about double time is that you just have to get used to everything being doubled. So for example, if I add this to my playlist, this is not 2 bars. Technically it's 1 bar. 1, 2, 3, 4. But the metronome hits twice. So as a beginner, you might trick yourself to think that we're counting 2 bars, but really it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4. So when you're at double time, I would recommend you guys think of every metronome hit as 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 like that, because you'll give a definition for the other metronome hitting. So it's 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 2 and 3 and what? My brain got caught up. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 2 and 2 and 3 and 4. 3 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 4 and 2 and 3 and 4 like that. So that second metronome hit won't trick you guys. So that's the difference between double time and regular time, is that you have to double the length of everything. Okay, so that's when we get into trap rhythms, that's the main difference. Same thing with drill. Let's add our drill snare in here. So let's add the tresillo. Now the thing is, drill is at double time, but we still do tresillo on the regular pattern here. So that's the cool part about drills, that we're using regular time, but also double time at the same exact time. So that's how you guys can get out the box. Now let's get into, I would say, more modern genres, which is stuff like Playboy Cardi and Lunchbox and like the new jazz movement. What we're gonna do here is put the snare on the 3 and the 6. So if you listen to the metronome, it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 2, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And the cool part about drill is that it uses a lot of variation, and that's why people love drill, because there's no cookie cutter thing to do for drill. Like I just showed you guys, we have regular timed counter snares and we have double timed 808s, and then we have snares that don't go on the typical spot. So let me show you guys what we could do with drill and new jazz as well. We can put the snare on the 3, the 6, the 8. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2. So I'm going to make variations. In FL Studio, you could hit Shift V, left click, let go of the left click. It creates a new pattern in FL Studio 2024. Now I can go in here and make a difference. So here I want it to be on the 3 and the 7. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, which is a regular trap pattern. And then we'll put the snare on the 3, 6, and the 8. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, like that. And then we can just do something weird, like, you know, what they do in UK drills, they put the snare on the 4 and the 7. So it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, 6, 7, like that. So let's hear all these patterns, and they all mesh because so at the end, I want to do tresillo, so it's ta, ta, ta at the end. So I'm just going to add little ghost notes, they're called. So ghost notes are really helpful. We're going to add in a note and turn the velocity down. And that just adds like a little bounce to your track. So use velocity changes. We also call these ghost notes. So we're covering a lot of topics. I got to make sure I'm not jumping too far ahead. So next up, we got triplets. So let's say we want to change up the counter snares. What we could do is click here and make this unique in FL Studio. And we want to end it differently. So instead of ta, 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 we want to go ta, 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 like that. We're going to change what's called the snap to grid to 1/3 beat. So triplets are different than tresillo. Tresillo is ta, 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 ta. Think reggaeton. Bam, bam. Bam, bam, bam. Whereas triplets are 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Think of like Gunna's flow or Lil Baby's flow. They have that. Started the bottom, I came from the dead. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, and 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1. That's their whole flow as triplets. So we're gonna do that with the. It's a little hard to see the triplets, so let's change the snap to grid to 1/3 beat. And now on this higher grid, here's a normal triplet. Okay, but we want to space this out. Now let's hear it in context. This might sound good, but it might not. Okay, so this, to me, it's too fast. Okay, so we want to spread this out. So what I'm going to do is hit Alt in FL Studio, left click, and drag this to double the length. And that's going to give me the bounce I'm looking for. So here at the end here, we have a triplet right here. One, two, three, 1, 2, 3. See how it creates a little tension because we're not playing tresillo. So let me show you guys something that's more for acoustic drums, which is called a flam. So for example, if I hit a snare drum, instead of going boom, ka, I can go boom, like that. It's like a rolling hit. So what we can do in FL Studio, let me find a snare. Instead of using just one snare hit like this, we could hit Alt F in FL Studio to create what's called a flam. And now here's what it sounds like. So let's start applying these techniques. So far we know about 4/4 timing. We know about tresillo, we know about ghost notes. So let's even apply this to acoustic stuff. I'm even going to write it at 140 BPM. Show you guys how to make some interesting drums. First, we got to find our hi-hat. So on the drum kit, for the most part, you know, when we're talking about multiple genres, there's different drums per genre. Every genre usually has a kick drum. That's the boom, boom sound. Every genre mostly has a snare or a clap. These are interchanged. So you'll hear it as like boom, ka. That's a snare, or boom is a clap. And then also we use what are called hi-hats. Most of the time, these are closed hi-hats for most genres, but with pop, you know, you guys can use open hi-hats and cymbals and all that. It expands a little bit when it comes to the hi-hat stuff, but you're still using that kick, the snare, hi-hat. Everything else is kind of like extra. Okay. So this is our pattern so far, and let's start applying some of these techniques. Now, one thing, I'm kind of jumping around here because I just want to show you guys real world stuff. So one thing we're going to do is to make this human, we're going to use velocity changes, and this will dramatically change the realism of your drums. So just turning down the velocity will help you guys' drums. It just makes it sound more realistic. Now let's find the kick. This kick's pretty heavy, so let's just turn that down a little bit. Now we're going to do tresillo, so it's boom, 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 boom. Just going to repeat the same thing. We're not going to make it fancy. Repeating tresillo. Now let's add our snare. So we're using Easy Drummer for these sounds. You know, these aren't the greatest samples. We could always swap out the kit, but that's not the focus here. We're just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now at the end, I want to create a change up with that little ghost note. Let's turn that velocity down. So here's where we're going to start adding ghost notes to create bounce. Because everything's together, it's a little hard to see the velocities. So it goes regular, 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 ghost note at the end for the snare. Now let's add a flam. Let's hit Alt F. Okay, so that's what the flam does. It kind of helps us create this like drum fill type vibe. So that's called a flam. Very useful for acoustic drums. Now you don't want to repeat, especially for acoustic drums, the same thing over and over and over again. So we're gonna duplicate this, hit Shift V, left click, and then let go of the click in FL Studio 2024 to duplicate. We're gonna make this pattern, we're gonna go back into pattern 13 and take out these ghost notes and the flam. So now it's going to be regular, and pattern 14 will have the variation. And then we're going to duplicate it again, hitting Control, Shift, left click, and drag it over. And we want to change something about pattern 13 and 14 so that it doesn't just play the same thing again. So let's make these unique in FL Studio. Let's change something about these. So our ear will tell us what we want to hear. Maybe some tom drums, a turnaround. We're definitely going to create a drum fill here. So here, let's change up the hi-hat timing maybe, just to switch it up. So here I want to go now in FL Studio 2024. If you click the ellipses here at the bottom, left click, pull this up, go to Control. Let's go to Note Repeat. And we want to find the note that we want to chop up or glitch. So right here, I want to chop up the end note. If I pull up the Note Repeat, it will chop it up in different increments. And that way it's a very fast way of creating chops. So basically we just chopped it in half. Okay, so that small change creates variation to the ear so it doesn't just get bored with the drums. Now also you got to keep in mind the music of the track. Overly doing the drums can distract from the music, so it depends on the genre. Now let's move into pattern 16, and here's where we're going to add our drum break excuse me, drum fill, I should say. So at the end, I want something dramatic to happen. Now here's where I'm gonna use my tom drums and my snare flams. Doo doo. So you have high pitched toms, you have lower pitched toms. Okay, so let's start with the higher pitched stuff and then work our way down to lower pitched. And consider this like a snare hit because you still have to hit it with the drumstick. And we're gonna do tresillo, so it's ta, 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 ta. I'll show you guys something in a second. Let's get the timing right here. Turn up the velocity. Okay, so let's do do, do, do. Now, if I pull this all the way back to the beginning and listen to the pattern. Let's make this tresillo. Okay, now let's move this to the right, hitting shift right in FL Studio. And let's figure out where we can place this. So notice it's all tresillo, it's just moved around. And there's variations of tresillo. I'm just showing you guys the most simple pattern, so it's not complicated. And there's our drum fill that tells us we're wrapping this up, we're going back to the beginning again. And you could also use cymbals and different things. I don't want to make this too focused on acoustic, but we could add also cymbals. And usually if you're doing cymbals, you're not doing hi-hats. But we're gonna leave them in for now. So really drum fills comes down to the drum libraries you guys have. So that's 90% of it, and mixing too to make those toms feel harder. So, but that's the science behind the rhythm of it, the drum pattern. Okay, now let's talk about swing. Swing is when we have notes going from like, let's do a boom bap rhythm actually. Let's go to like 90. Now I would say boom bap starts around 82 BPM. And this is where you really hear that swing at its highest degree. Let's go to some Sound Oracle drums. Actually, let's do some drum breaks to show you guys like real chopping. Okay, let's go to Ado has some pretty dope drum breaks in here. Okay, so we're just gonna right click, open and slice, and it will auto slice for us. So now we can program our drums just like we did with the plugin that we had. So now the drums are laid out across the keyboard automatically. So the reason we're doing it this way is to show you little stuff we could do in the piano roll. Now, do I always write my drums like it's a plugin? No. So you guys can separate your sounds as well. It might be a little tedious. It's just easier when you have this many chops to do it in this way. Okay, so now we have our kick. So we're looking for kick, hi-hat, snare, and percussion. So here's our hi-hat. Now we're gonna keep this extremely simple for this example. So we're just gonna copy these over, and then I'll show you guys how to humanize all this stuff. Let's copy this over. So it's just hi-hat all the way through. And then we'll add this kick. Now I like to have two kicks, one as a ghost kick like buh, and the other one like boom. So ba-boom like that. So here's the heavy kick. And here's somewhat of a ghost kick. Now, even if you guys don't have a ghost kick, what we can do in FL Studio is go to that specific marker. So in this case, it's marker 6. We could double click on it. And we can send it to a new filter envelope, it's called, articulator. Let's turn the low pass filter on. And this way it muffles the kick. Okay, so let's turn this down a little bit. I guess we can't hear it in the plugin itself. Let's do it here. So now we have that muffled kick. So now it's going to be like boom, like that. It's going to sound more realistic. So I would recommend if you guys are doing boom bap, have at least 2 kicks to cycle between. And now let's just add the bouncy snares. Now that we're at a lower BPM, now I have to change my grid to a smaller degree. This is why I said producers tend to stay at higher BPMs because they don't have to go into microscopic grids to start making their drums. Now, because this drum sample was created from like a plugin, I can tell because every sample sounds the same. It doesn't have that human variation in it. But you also want to look for a ghost snare in the actual drum break. But what we can do to emulate that is just turn down the velocity. Okay, so we don't need technically another sample for the snare. Okay, let's add more kicks. So now we have the kicks back to back. So here's where swing parameter will really work its magic, is back to back notes. Now right now it's ba-boom like that, ba-boom, but we want it to go ba-boom like that instead of ba-boom. So I'll show you guys how to make this sound realistic. We're just going to copy this over so that we're not doing too much. So we have these, and then we'll put that at the end. All right, so pretty simple. Copy these over one more time. Okay, so the question is how do we make this more realistic? So the first thing we're going to do is offset the hi-hats. So even without doing anything else, what we're doing by offsetting the hi-hats is that the hi-hats almost act as a metronome for our drums. Okay, so once you have your hi-hat set, and again, another technique is just lower every other hi-hat. That's one technique. You don't always need to do this, but it's just one technique. You can also do high, mid, low, mid. So it goes ta, ta, tu, ta, 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 tu, like that. That's another technique. But what we're going to do with the hi-hats that supersedes all that is we're going to move the timing of the notes to the right. You guys can hit Alt right or just nudge the notes and drag them to the right. So this is creating a delay on the hi-hat. I'll exaggerate so you guys can hear. So those hi-hats are really behind the beat. And this is what creates groove, that time difference between the drums. Okay, so what we could do though is pull that back. That was a little heavy. So what you could do in FL Studio, there's a tool here called Humanize. You guys can mess with that. I also recommend you guys download the remove overlaps script. This helps for any errors that the other thing just does. So now we really have a human timing on our drums. Now for hi-hats, for this specific technique, we're going to hit Control L. Actually, let's hit Alt L and only with selection. We're going to highlight all this, hit Control to highlight this note, hit Alt L. So that way, the way slice works is that it plays for as long as you hold the note. So the longer we hold the note, the more the sample we're going to hear. It's very important for things like a drum break to play the whole sample. Turn this up a little bit. So even without swing, we still have a lot of vibe. Let's hit Control L. Let's send this to the mixer. Let's send it through a plugin so we don't get super clipping. This is beyond the scope of the video, but I'm just showing you guys how to get that crunch out of your drums. You could also do this to your acoustic. It just depends what you guys are starting with. Okay, so now we're going to turn up what's called the swing parameter. So the swing parameter even created a new genre called New Jack Swing with Teddy Riley. The swing parameter is where we add the da-doom like that. Instead of boom, ba boom, it goes da-doom. So as I turn this up, listen to the back-to-back kicks. Hear it switch. I'll turn it up slow. Now the kicks are like ba-boom, ba-boom, ba-boom. It's turning the rhythm into more of a triplet style rhythm. Okay, so that's basically what we're doing here. I don't know what happened to my grid there. Just deleted something. I have no idea what I pressed. All right, so we're gonna deal with this. Okay, so that is our swing parameter, and we can mess with that for different boom bap styles. Okay, so let's go all the way back. Now this is all tempo dependent, because if I play all the patterns we created today, these are too slow. That was our drill pattern at 144, so let's crank it back up to 144. 144, there we go. So you guys learned a lot. We did drill, we did trap, we did, I forgot we had the swing parameter on. So swing does also affect higher BPMs, but it's in a different way. It's only when notes are back to back at a very close amount. If they're not close, you're not going to hear the swing. So we can't do that at higher BPMs. That's why I went down to 82 BPM. I forgot what BPM our drums were at for the rock drum, so let's just do 100. Let's see what swing sounds like on these. Oh, you know what? These are at 140. That's right. So that's why we're not hearing swing. The notes aren't close enough. Let's see what happens if we route these to our saturation. So we covered variation here. I showed you guys how to copy the groove from the drum break. So you guys learned a lot in a short amount of time. So I just want to make sure before we get into the next section, which is just application, which we basically showed you. I showed you guys Playboy Cardi, new jazz style, showed you guys Afrobeat, reggaeton, trap. Showed you guys. Now, one thing I didn't show you guys is R&B, which is pretty much the same thing. We went over drill. So let's go back to our boom bap rhythm we have here. Let's do 82. So my favorite starting points for boom bap are 82 and 84 BPM, or 88, somewhere around there. But 84 is like the sweet spot for me. So you can turn up the swing to where it's corny swing. But it does add a lot of push-pull energy. So let's pull that back a little bit. So you guys got to find that perfect spot where it's not overly done. And one last thing I want to cover is just syncopation. Syncopation is how we, my screen is all messed up, so it's so weird doing this. So syncopation is on the ands. So instead of counting 1, 2, 3, 4, I'm counting 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. So instead of playing, which is just 1, 2, 3, 4, we're going to add the and. So it's 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. That's called syncopation, when we're putting stuff on the ands. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And that adds the bounce to the track. Without that, it doesn't really add bounce. So the syncopation adds a contrast or a distance, okay? Because now we're offsetting the timing. So it's 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and... So another technique for your drum patterns is try omitting snares, try just deleting notes. Hopefully you guys can combine all these to create a really unique style. We went over the pretty much, you know, like the actual in real life practice of writing rhythms. So if you guys want to learn more, go to busyworksbeats.com and join now. It's Game from busyworksbeats.com. Peace out, guys.